Missouri is the latest U.S. state to push for tougher anti-abortion laws. Its Senate passed a bill early this morning which bans abortions after 8 weeks of pregnancy. It could be passed into law as early as tomorrow. And it comes right on the heels of Alabama's even stricter legislation. Lindsay Duncombe is tracking developments for us in Washington. And Lindsay, you were in Missouri on this story. What did you find?
Well, we got to watch some of the debate play out both in the House and the Senate. The bill that was initially considered was actually more restrictive than what the Senate passed last night. That would be a ban that would begin at the time a fetal heartbeat is detected as early as 6 weeks into pregnancy, which many doctors say many women know that they don't know that they are pregnant that early in pregnancy. So what the Senate passed is, in a sense, a compromise on this bill. And the question now is, will the House pass it? It likely will. And then this will become one of several states that is passing these restrictive laws. And the big picture goal of these laws, Andrew, is to have a state law that could potentially be challenged, because they all will be challenged in court, and go all the way to the Supreme Court as a challenge to Roe versus Wade. And what the state legislatures are seeing here now is an opening, because Donald Trump, who promised to appoint anti-abortion justices to the Supreme Court, has done that in 2 cases. State legislatures see an opening here where Roe versus Wade, the ruling that legalized abortion in 1973 in the United States, could be challenged. We spoke with the sponsor of Missouri's bill in the House about the potential for going to the Supreme Court. Here's how he classified it.
The goal is to save as many lives as possible, but if it's going to set a tidal wave and ripple effect of different states looking to us for guidance and attacking Roe v. Wade on that basis, I'm all for it.
So Missouri joins Alabama this week in tightening abortion rules. Some other states are doing the same thing. So what's the big picture here, Lindsay?
Well, we are going to see more states continue to do this until the Supreme Court decides if it is going to hear a course, and there's going to be a lot of protests and build up to that moment. And one of the effects of the backlash to this bill and others being passed is that women are saying that they had abortions, so that it is something that is becoming less stigmatized. Something that was once private is now being shared publicly in order to make people realize just how common the practice is. 1 in 4 American women will seek to have an abortion or will have an abortion at one point. We've seen that from celebrities such as Busy Phillips, who said that she had an abortion when she was younger. And we also saw it when we were in the rotunda of the state legislature in Missouri, when Ivania Woods said that she had an abortion at 28 years old. She didn't have much money. She was a student. Here's how she classified that decision.
Searching my options and looking at, how much I could get in through public assistance, even that wasn't even enough for one child to get through. And so I was like, there's no way I can do this on my own. It's emotional in the sense that it makes me very angry.
And Andrew, this anger and emotion will continue if the Supreme Court does revisit this, if Roe versus Wade is overturned. The most likely scenario is that abortion will be legal in some states and illegal in others.
All right, Lindsay, thank you. The CBC's Lindsay Duncombe in Washington. As Lindsay mentioned, other states have also introduced legislation to restrict abortion rights, including Alabama, Arkansas, Georgia, Kentucky, Mississippi, and Ohio. For more on the legal aspect of this, we're turning now to Jessie Hill. She is a litigator and law professor at Case Western Reserve University and specializes in reproductive rights. Jessie Hill joins us from Cleveland. Jessie, so what do you make of all of these recent developments?
Well, if you've been paying attention to this issue, as I have, none of this is really surprising. We've seen this coming ever since Justice Anthony Kennedy was replaced on the U.S. Supreme Court by Justice Brett Kavanaugh. It's been widely expected that anti-abortion proponents would be bringing these suits to try to get Roe v. Wade overturned. I am a little surprised that it's happened this quickly and sort of this aggressively of late, but we did see this coming for a long time.
Why do you think it is happening, in your words, so quickly and so aggressively?
Well, I think those who would like to see Roe v. Wade overturned just have the sense that the time is right now to bring out this legislation and to provoke these lawsuits to try to get before the U.S. Supreme Court as quickly as possible. It's possible that the Supreme Court won't want to decide this issue so quickly, and that they're overplaying their hand, but they are certainly feeling confident. They have a lot of momentum on their side, and they think that this is the right strategy right now.
So tell me a little bit about that, because you seem to be weighing your feelings on whether or not the Supreme Court is going to hear this case, and is Roe v. Wade in danger. So what do you think is at play here right now when it comes to that kind of decision by the U.S. Supreme Court?
Well, the U.S. Supreme Court does not have to hear any particular case. It gets to pick and choose which ones it decides to hear. It can sometimes just leave a lower court, or often just leaves lower court decisions standing without any explanation. And so I do think it's possible that the Supreme Court will just not want to wade into this issue so soon after Justice Kennedy retired and was replaced by the Trump appointee, Justice Brett Kavanaugh. I think many of the justices, in particular, the Chief Justice, is very concerned about the legitimacy of the court and about not appearing to be a political body. And I think if the court takes one of these cases and just wholesale overturns a 46-year-old precedent so quickly after a change in personnel on the court, it will look like this decision was really about politics and really about who's on the court, not about the Constitution and legal principle.
Why do you think this is happening? Why has there been such a fast clip of states that have either, the past laws that are so restrictive?
I can only speculate, but one possibility is it seems to me that they're all kind of racing to the Supreme Court, that they all want to be the ones that get there. There is an argument that for some of the politicians who are pushing these laws, they want to have their names on that case, on the case that overturns Roe v. Wade, because it plays to their particular conservative, often religious base, and they think it will, give them some political payoff in the future. So I can't speak specifically in any one case, but I have a sense that might be happening in some of these instances.
So I know we may be getting a little ahead of ourselves, but this is definitely the kind of conversation, the kind of question I think a lot of people are asking is, do you think that Supreme Court decision, Roe v. Wade, do you think that is in danger of being overturned?
I think it is in the most precarious position that I have seen since 1973. I think it is more in danger now than it has ever been. Now, that being said, I just told you all these reasons why the U.S. Supreme Court might not decide one of these cases now and may not overturn it now. But there are a lot of reasons to think down the road, after a decent interval, that the Supreme Court may take one of these cases and overturn it. I think the votes potentially are certainly there. Other issues, if Donald Trump gets reelected in 2020, if one of the justices, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's 86, decides to step down, any of those things could put sort of a supermajority on the court to take a case and to overturn Roe, and all bets are off at that point.
And what's the significance of that?
Wow, it would be really big. Roe v. Wade is a decision that has a real really important place in American culture and in U.S. Sort of consciousness. It is also, I believe it would be the first time that the U.S. Supreme Court has ever recognized a constitutional right and then later taken it away. And I think that would really could have a huge political impact, huge cultural impact here. And obviously, not to mention the sort of facts on the ground of the severe physical and emotional and other forms of harm that it caused for women who would, be denied abortions. On the other hand, what the likely scenario would be that if the U.S. Supreme Court overturns Roe, the decision would go back to each individual state to decide whether or not to allow abortions. And so we would see a patchwork of laws across the U.S., where some states criminalized abortion in almost all circumstances, and others, continued to allow it in most or all circumstances.
Jessie, it was great to talk to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew.
Law professor Jesse Hill of Case Western Reserve University in Cleveland. Earlier today at his news conference in Paris, Justin Trudeau was asked for his thoughts on the new abortion restrictions in some U.S. states.
Obviously, we are deeply disappointed by the backsliding on women's rights that we're seeing in some places around the world, including in some American states. As a government, as Canadians, we will always be unequivocal about defending women's right to choose, defending women's rights in general. It's a shame that we increasingly see conservative governments and conservative politicians taking away rights that have been hard fought over many, many years by generations of women and male allies.
Trudeau says his Liberal government will always support abortion rights in Canada and around the world.